In this topic, we will look into some well-known semantic lexicons that were built mostly for English, but are being built for other languages as well, just like WordNets. Before we dive into the structure of these lexicons, we need to say something about semantic or thematic roles. We already mentioned thematic roles in our video about valency, but there we were mostly concerned with syntax and its relation to semantics. Here we will specify these roles and the linguistic models into more detail. Thematic or semantic roles are one of the oldest linguistic models, proposed first by the Indian grammarian Panini sometime between the 7th and 4th century BC. Their modern formulation was offered by Filmore and Gruber. Although there is no universally agreed upon set of roles, the ones we'll see on the following slides have been used by various authors. Most thematic role sets have about a dozen roles, but there are sets with smaller numbers of roles with even more abstract meanings, and sets with very large numbers of roles that are specific to situations. According to Juravsky and Martin, semantic roles are representations that express the abstract role that arguments of a predicate can take in the event. These can be very specific, like the buyer in Anne bought new shoes. Anne is the buyer. Abstract, like the agent. Anne in Anne bought new shoes can be the agent. Or super abstract, Anne can be the proto-agent. These roles can both represent general semantic properties of the arguments, but also their likely relationship to the syntactic role of the argument in the sentence. Semantic role labeling is the task of assigning roles to the constituents of phrases in sentences. Selectional restrictions are the semantic restrictions or preferences that each individual predicate can express about its potential arguments, such as the fact that the theme of the verb eat is generally something edible, like Mary ate the apple. A variety of theories exist that characterize the arguments of predicates in terms of thematic or semantic roles, such as agent, theme, location, etc. Classifications were intended to capture syntactic and semantic characteristics of the respective verb arguments and verb classes. Fillmore argued for a universal set of atomic thematic roles to capture mainly semantic generalizations and use these to classify verbs according to the case frames they allow. Jack and Duff defined a small number of thematic roles in terms of primitive semantic predicates in LCS. We will learn more about lexical conceptual structures later, and established linking principles to map syntactic and semantic arguments. But no agreement could be reached on a complete and universal set of thematic roles. Here, we will look into some of the most frequent semantic roles. Agent is an animate being that acts volitionally or intentionally and tends to be the subject of an active sentence, e.g. John in John killed the bug. Experiencer is animate being that experiences an emotion or some psychological state. For instance, Mark in Mark felt sad, or Mia in Mia has a migraine. Patient is an animate being affected by an action that tends to be the direct object of an active sentence. For instance, in Dad killed the snake would be a patient. Subjects of all these verbs, John, Mark, Mia, or Dad, in our examples are agents. Thus, agent is the thematic role that represents an abstract idea such as volitional causation. Source is the origin of the object of a transfer event or the entity from which something moves. For instance, from Mary in Mark bought the book from Mary would be the source. Or source would be from Paris in the sentence the train came back from Paris. Finally, off the shelf would be the source in the sentence the toy rolled off the shelf. Goal is the destination of an object of a transfer event. For instance, home is the goal in Mark ran home, or to Paris is the goal in the sentence Mia flew to Paris. Finally, path is a way of getting from the source to the goal. So, in the sentence, the car crossed the field would be path. Theme is inanimate object most directly affected by an event. For instance, the vase in the sentence Mike broke the vase is theme. The direct object of the verb break is the broken thing, inanimate object that is affected in some way by the action. Result is the end product of an event. For instance, white in the sentence she painted the room white represents the result. Instrument is an inanimate object used by an agent to achieve the event. For instance, the knife in the sentence Mark cut the meat with a knife, or the knife in the sentence the knife cut the meat is an instrument case. Recipient is a second animate participant in the sentence. It functions as the goal for the patient. For instance, Susan in Mark gave Susan a CD is a recipient. Beneficiary, on the other hand, is an animate being who benefits from an event. For instance, Susan in Mark got Susan a present, or Mark in John did a favor for Mark would be beneficiaries. Although recipient and beneficiary seem to be quite similar roles, recipient does not necessarily benefit from an event. For instance, Susan in Mark gave Susan a CD might not be a new owner of the CD. It might be that Mark has only lended Susan his CD, so the ownership might not have changed. Malefactive is an animate participant who is affected adversely by an agent, so him in his father died on him would be malefactive. Location is an inanimate peripheral participant that situates the state or event in space. For instance, library in the sentence Mark reads in the library would be location. Time is an inanimate peripheral participant that situates state or event in time. So Monday in the sentence Mark was sick on Monday would represent time. Causer is a core participant, a human, that causes an agent to do something. He instigates an event rather than actually doing it. So in the sentence, teacher got student to write the essay, teacher would be causer of an action. It has proved difficulty to formally define the thematic roles. If we consider the agent role in our previous examples, in most cases agents are animate, volitional, sentient, causal, but any individual noun phrase might not exhibit all of these properties. These problems have led to alternative semantic role models that use either many fewer or many more roles. The first of these options, introduced by Doughty in 1991, is to define generalized semantic roles that abstract over the specific thematic roles. For example, proto-agent and proto-patient are generalized roles that express roughly agent-like and roughly patient-like meanings. These roles are defined not by necessary and sufficient conditions, but rather by a set of heuristic features that accompany more agent-like or more patient-like meanings. Thus, the more an argument displays agent-like properties, being volitionally involved in the event, causing an event or a change of state in another participant, the greater the likelihood that the argument can be labeled a proto-agent. The more patient-like the properties, undergoing change of state, causally affected by another participant, stationary relative to other participants, the greater the likelihood that the argument can be labeled a proto-patient. The second direction is instead to define semantic roles that are specific to a particular verb or a particular group of semantically related verbs and nouns. FrameNet is an example of a lexicon that took this direction. Next, we will look into different semantic lexicons based on these two approaches to semantic role representation. Here, you can see the list of references important for the definition of semantic or thematic roles, semantic role labeling, and selectional restrictions.